think the secret behind all this might also lie in the question that why it is happening now. And I think most importantly, where we are heading from this point, as Dr. Luca, you said. So yes, a lot to talk about, and we will continue doing so shortly. First, let me recap the debate that today we are trying to make sense of Nazarbaev's recent announcement to transfer some of his powers to his cabinet. Joining me in the discussion are Eda Schlager, German freelance reporter based in Kazakhstan, Nobet Besenov, Kazakhstan reporter for BNE and Telenews, Bruce Pannier, editor of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's Central Asia blog, Kishlok Ovozi, and Dr. Luka Cheschi, chair of Central Asian Studies at the University of Glasgow. I am Mohammed Tahir, host of the Majlis here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dwell on this a little bit more. Bruce or Dr. Luka, earlier I gave reference to your story of late last year on Nazarbaev's efforts for an apparent exit strategy from an active politics. So I guess my question is open to both of you. So what were some of the obvious signs that would indicate something like this was coming?
I'll let Luca go first.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Bruce. Well, there's nothing obvious, but because it's Kazakhstan, it operates still in a very seclusive, if you want, opaque way. There was nothing obvious, but Bruce and I have been looking at sort of a series of appointments, a series of statements, a series of declarations made in the last 12 months. And we've realized that the new government, and that must have been around September, October, am I right, Bruce? September, October, the new cabinet was really almost tailor-made to steer a transition, to organize a transition in a way in which Nazarbayev doesn't make power. For us, of course, the most important change was Sagintayev replacing Masimov, and putting an ethnic Kazakh at the top of the government was actually the sign that the population had to somehow come to terms with the fact that there could be someone else in power very soon. Or maybe that was just a vehicle for change. So things probably got accelerated a bit with Karimov's death. I mean, I got different sort of feedback about that. Some people say, well, Nazarbayev didn't really care, and some other people think, yeah, that really shook him. But what we realized is that towards the end of the year, there was this sort of somehow confirmed situation in which everything was getting ready for some change. Yesterday's declaration is not really, I mean, especially for Bruce and me, who wrote that piece, it's not surprising in the sense that we knew that the change is coming. What is surprising, perhaps, and that I'd like to hear your thought about this, Bruce, is that I would have thought that Nazarbayev would just go and say, I'm going to name this person my successor. With what we hear now is the establishment of a presidential system, parliamentary system, which is a very hybrid solution, which changes everything without really changing nothing. So that probably is something which I didn't expect.
Bruce, obviously, the floor is open to comment on what Dr. Luka has suggested. But to continue Dr. Luka's point, how we can relate his recent reshuffles in the top leadership with the announcement he just made. I guess my question is, when we put together the recent changes in the top leadership and the announcement he made this week, what does this say as a package about his intention?
Well, I'm on record as saying that I think he is working toward a day when he will call a press conference like he did yesterday, and it really will be the announcement that, I've been leading the country for more than 25 years. Things are going fairly well. Certainly, if you compare what's happening in Kazakhstan with its other Central Asian neighbors, you'd have to say Kazakhstan is an outstanding success at the moment. He made the cabinet shuffles in two parts in September, and at the end of December and early in January, he made a couple other little shifts, that didn't get the kind of publicity that the September changes did, but certainly, he changed. There was some changes in the presidential administration, for instance, which were kind of under the radar, but he brought Marat Tajan back, for instance. Mm-hmm. who's been a longtime ally of his and was serving as the ambassador to Russia more recently. But, this is a strong loyalist and someone that Nazarbayev has been able to depend on him by putting him, I believe his post is deputy chairman of the presidential administration at the moment now. He's going to play a big part in drafting these new constitutional amendments, and he's going to make sure that this is whatever changes they do agree to and put forward are going to be something that's absolutely in keeping with Nazarbayev, but with Nazarbayev's best interests. But I do think that given the nature of the man, the fact that Karimov died when he was 78, Nazarbayev is going to be 77 in July. That Nazarbayev figures that he's trying to put the last big shiny stars on his term as president. Once the economic situation starts to turn around, and there's a couple other big events this year, they're hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Expo 2017 is coming up in the summer. So I think he's waiting for some of these things to get behind him, and he's slowly building the model of government that he wants and the people in that government that he wants in place that are going to guarantee his future when the day comes that he finally decides that he's going to announce that I'm getting on in years and I'm turning this over. He keeps talking about the younger generation, about how you need young politicians. I think he will turn it over to the younger generation. Should he do so, as I believe he will, he seals his place in, not only in Kazakhstan's history, but really sets a model for other presidents that you can leave power and still be alive and not be run out of power, and with really the best wishes of your people. People will respect him for years and years to come because he has done a lot for Kazakhstan. So he's building up a government that he sure is not going to totally change direction once he's gone, that's going to ensure his safety, his family's safety, those things.
I mentioned this at the beginning of the discussion that we will be in the uncharted territory, so we remain there. Let's go to Kazakhstan. What is the local feeling? Does it sound at all that he might be leaving the active politics soon sometime? Nobody?
I don't quite agree with Bruce that president might be announcing his resignation.
Or maybe he is preparing for such a strategy in the upcoming future.
Yeah, he might be thinking about it, but again, as you said, it's uncharted waters. We don't know what might or what might not happen. But I don't think any talk of transition or indeed successful transition of power in Kazakhstan is possible without sort of steps towards democratization on the ground. For example, without free and fair elections to parliament, allowing opposition parties to operate and stand in the election. And when people talk of increasing power of parliament, I think if our parliament becomes fully fledged parliament which can think for itself, not stuffed, as Bruce said, with 3 pro-presidential parties, plus 9 appointees from a body which is appointed by the president himself. So I think when Kazakhstan will hold a semblance of democratic elections, then we can be sure that Nazarbayev is thinking of or is setting off the process of transition.
Ada, anything you want to add in this?
Yes, for me it's quite surprising, sorry if I'm saying this, how serious you take these planned amendments or these planned changes. Maybe I'm not right and I'm not an expert for constitutional law or something like this, so I might not really understand what these slight changes in certain articles and paragraphs mean, but there were some examples of a very, very smart, strategic and tactical play in the past. So Nazarbayev, he always was really able to play this game, to play democracy maybe now with this weakness of the West, it's not so necessary anymore to play democracy for the Western countries. But I think he knows tactics and strategy very, very well. And why shouldn't he use such moves right now? This is for me the question. And as I already said, I think the time to distract people from the real economic problems is good. It's quite good enough to distract them from their economical problems, because people do have economical problems. After these devaluation moves during the last 2 years, it's quite difficult. The prices for flats and for property, they've fallen down. And I see that people are not really interested in politics, and that's why they don't take serious this speech from yesterday. This is my impression.
Mm-hmm. And now I think,
Mohammed, do you mind if I just jump in here?
I think you should. Yeah, please.
Well, yes, you're right, Ed, that the people don't really care about politics, but the politicians care about politics in this case. So I think that you are right. Again, if we look at the process and as the first step towards the introduction of political change, democracy, yes, you're right, we shouldn't take it seriously. But if we look at the process as an attempt to preserve authoritarianism while the president is alive, then becomes very interesting. Because so far in Central Asia, power has been transferred either by revolution or, like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, the president's death and someone steps in from an elite appointment. This could be a new, if you want, chapter in how power is understood and digested in the region. So I think that provided that we all agree that there is not going to be any qualitative improvement in Kazakhstan's governance, this is a very interesting process because it shows how the regime perpetuates itself while the leader is alive. And this hasn't happened yet in the region 25 years.
Yeah, yes, I think it's true, of course. And I have to admit, all this reshuffling during the last month, I don't exactly understand this. Maybe Bruce, you with your experience, you know all these names from the 90s, from the early 2000 years. Maybe you could better explain it. What does this reshuffling mean? Is there something going on? Is there already a successor? Do you see already a successor?
I wish I could say I do see one. I think that probably Nazarbaev has a better idea of who that would be now at this time than he did 6 months ago or a year ago. Certainly he's packed the cabinet with a bunch of people who are absolutely loyalists and put them in positions where he can really count on them. I mean, moving Masimov over to be the head of security is good. Masimov's been with him for a long time. He was with his alleged Uyghur background, roots. He was never going to be able to be president anyway. So he's a good person to be head of security because he can watch out for Nazarbaev and his family. And moving Tajin back over, although admittedly the position that Tajin ended up taking was because of one of the people in the presidential administration was apparently caught disclosing state secrets, Nazarbaev. But, we laid out in the paper, Luca and I a while ago too, if you look at some of the people who just got appointed in government and trace their roots back, you end up with Nazarbaev almost all the time. Somewhere along the line, these people are all linked to Nazarbaev, even going back to like the 80s. Sagantaya, for instance, is married to the daughter of one of Nazarbaev's mentors from the Communist Party in the 1980s.
And who become
so these are the kind of people that you're looking at that are being packed in. That to me shows that we are looking at some kind of succession. And if we talk about transition, I think Luca brought up a good point. I wouldn't suggest that we're talking about a transition of the political system at all. We are talking about a transition of the leadership within the same system that we have right now.
Interesting points. But unfortunately, we have to conclude the debate. But final notes, two questions that I cannot avoid asking. In this scenario, in this case, so what should we expect to see next and when? Who wants to take this question? Dr.
All right, well, I'll go first real fast. One thing, it's not just us that see, or some of us that see that there's questions of succession in there, and I think a lot of the elites are aware of the fact, whether it's Nazarbaev deciding that he wants to step down voluntarily or whether it's, Father Time taking him, that he is going. And there's a race right now that we don't see. And that we probably won't be able to get a look at. But if you're in the elites right now, you're moving because you know that your chance or something, either you got to be able to defend yourself or take advantage of the situation that's coming. And we're going to see a lot of people shuffled around, moved out, possibly arrested. We've seen a couple of those lately too, because the fight for power is on.
Okay. Dr. Luca, if you want to add something, that is good. Otherwise, my last point would be from the last announcement, did you see anything which relates to Dariga Nazarbaeva, whether she benefits from this in any way or her son?
Well, if you believe the rhetoric there's going to be a parliamentary system, then you realize that she may. I don't see a direct benefit, but I'm still one of those who believes that she will not be her father's successor. In any case, I think that the great winner yesterday is the elite, because the elite got to the point in which the president was publicly admitted that he's going to the beach and change. So that's a big sort of significant event in the history of Kazakhstan the last 25 years. Nazarbayev went public and said there's going to be some change in the system. And this is the preservation that leaves the same people in power. So I think that if not Dariga, the other people are really happy. And as Bruce said, they're moving because this opportunity don't come very often. Well, once every 25 years, I think you understand. So it's going to be super interesting from now on.
Great stuff. Well done, guys. Thank you very much, Dr. Lukan Cheschi, Chair of the Glasgow University Central Asian Studies, Bruce Pannier, Editor of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's Central Asia blog, Kishlak Awazi, journalists from Kazakhstan, Eda Schlager, freelance reporter for German media in Kazakhstan, and Novat Besenov, Kazakhstan reporter for BNE and Telenews. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you. And this is it from me, Mohammed Tahir, host of the Majlis, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty's Central Asia podcast. Until next week, bye-bye.